Hey guys, what's up? Zijin here, and I'm going to be reviewing the Xiaomi Redmi 3. The Redmi brand is Xiaomi's low-end range of phones, and honestly, it doesn't look or feel that way. This phone is many things. It's cheap, 160 bucks, metal body, it has a huge battery, and has really decent specs. But is this phone good? We've seen many other cell phones have great specs but fail to deliver in the user experience. Does Xiaomi fall into the same trap? Continue watching to find out. So this phone has great build quality. The body is metal, and it looks and feels much more expensive than just 150 bucks. The phone is really easy to hold in one hand, even with my small hands. It's just a little bigger than the iPhone 6s, which is really impressive for a big battery phone. It's 2mm thicker than the iPhone at 8.5mm, but you have to fit the battery somewhere, right? However, the way Xiaomi rounded the corners make this phone feel quite a bit thicker than it really is. The bezels on this phone are actually quite big. So the metal around the screen isn't huge, but there is a black strip around the entire screen which makes the phone bigger than it has to be. You also have the capacitive buttons on the bottom and the notification light below the home button. That, in my opinion, is a strange place to put the notification light. Why not up top beside the camera? The micro SIM and micro SD card slot are on the left while the volume and power buttons are on the right. I don't usually talk about the buttons anymore, as almost all phones are solid and have really good button feedback, but on the Redmi, the feedback from the buttons are kind of weak. Going back to the back of the Redmi, again it's metal but it's really slippery. The metal also picks up smudges like crazy, but the diamond pattern hides it pretty well. There are plastic strips on the top and the bottom for the radio to improve the signal, more about that later. You find the camera flush against the back and the speaker grill at the bottom. The build quality on the Xiaomi Redmi 3 is really good, but there's two things I dislike. First, the hardware buttons don't feel very good, and it's also really slippery. So we have a 720p resolution on a 5-inch panel. Some of you might just stop watching after I said that. If it's a deal breaker, I completely understand, but just listen for a little bit more, because even with that resolution, the display is nothing short of great. Color reproduction is accurate, if a bit on the cool side, but nothing extreme. Contrast is really decent as well and can give you some really AMOLED-like contrasts. You can play around with the color temperature and saturation values in MIUI as well. The display can crank up to 520 nits of brightness, which is bright enough for using in sunlight, but the glass is a little bit reflective, so you have to tilt your phone to avoid reflection sometimes. Minimum brightness is crazy good though. In a dark room, I can barely see on the lowest brightness. The touch sensitivity is super sensitive and is really responsive as well. Xiaomi didn't give us any info on what kind of glass it is, but it might not actually be Gorilla Glass. I'm really happy with the display. Colors are great, it gets super bright and super dark. The only downsides are 720p and it's probably not Gorilla Glass. There's one speaker on the back of the device and it's really loud. Quality is really good as well, but highs are a little muffled at max volume and bass can be light as well. However, the speaker in general is still pretty good, so have a listen for yourself. The battery. Just thinking about how big the battery is makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So how will the battery do? I'm expecting nothing short of amazing results when you have a 4100 mAh battery powering a 720p display. Let's see how it does in the tests. I did two tests. First, I reloaded a web page every 10 seconds and the phone died after 15 hours and 25 minutes. Then I looped a video until it died and it lasted for 17 hours and 2 minutes. Those are insane battery results and are actually better than my other big battery phones like the Emlace MX Base and the TCL 5000, which had bigger batteries than this phone. Here's a more real-life battery test. I unplugged at 6 AM, I listened to podcasts for about 2 hours, I did an hour or so of news and Reddits, played an hour of games, and I had 60% left at 10 PM. You definitely won't be able to use up this battery in just one day, unless you're my friend and you play Clash of Clans or Clash Royale for 8 hours a day. Even then, you probably have a few percent left, which is more than enough to get you through 5 to 6 hours of light use. Light and medium users expect 2, 3, and maybe even 4 days without charging. We have Android 5.1 installed here, and it's pretty decent. All Xiaomi phones run MIUI, their own skin on top of Android. MIUI basically tries to make your Android phone look like iOS as much as possible. It's really fast, really smooth, and really snappy, a little bit smoother and snappier than the Galaxy S6, but it's not Nexus 6P level yet. Even then, no complaints about performance here. Aesthetics though, that's another issue. Whether you like MIUI will come down to personal preference. I'm personally indifferent, I don't hate it or love it. Installing a custom launcher only changes the home screen. The setting menus though will still be MIUI style. The ROM here is a Chinese ROM. I know what you're thinking, it's not as bad as it looks. When you turn on the phone for the first time, everything is in Chinese. So what you have to do is just navigate to the language and change it to English. So just follow what I'm doing here. And then once you do that, everything is changed to English and you're good to go. I'm going to talk a little bit about the apps and features that are pre-installed here, because some of them are really good and some of them are garbage. Going through the settings, you are given a ton of customization options like changing the quick toggles, changing the theme of the entire phone. I personally don't really mess around with themes, but if you do, there are a ton of themes on the Xiaomi store. You can change system font size and a ton of other customizations as well. You can change default apps for pretty much anything, it really comes in quite handy. This is obviously not as deep as rooting and installing Exposed, but it's really decent for a stock ROM. There is also a light mode, which is a nice way of saying, well, old people mode. It really dumbs down the UI a lot and makes it less confusing. There is also a handy child mode, which allows you to restrict access to certain apps. There is one-handed mode, which shrinks the screen down so you can use it with just one hand. You can assign and map headphone buttons as well. Now, pre-installed apps. There are 6 of them. The first 4 are kind of useless: the Xiaomi App Store, Mi Accounts, Mi Wallet, and Kuaipan. These are probably super useful in China. Outside China though, not so much. Then you have UC Browser, which is pretty fast, but I just use Chrome instead. The last 2 apps are more useful. First, you have the Security app, which has some really useful and some not so useful features. There is a built-in Clean Master type function, and there's a virus scanner, so those were not that useful. You can give apps individual permissions and auto start and block apps. The second app is the Music app. This isn't just a music player, but a music store as well. However, I recommend it really highly because you can download all the latest hits legally for free, like Work by Rihanna. You cannot stream them though, that requires a premium subscription, but honestly, I'm really happy with being able to download them. What's the catch? Nothing much, you don't even have to sign in with a Xiaomi account or anything. Here are the pre-installed languages as well. The Redmi 3 uses a Snapdragon 616, a slightly different SoC from the 615. Thankfully, the 616 doesn't share any of the problems the 615 did, such as overheating and bad performance. The processor didn't have any problems playing the most intense games at 720p like Nova, or less intense games like Clash Royale or Hearthstone. I ran Antutu as well and got a score of about 34,000. Do I have any problems with MIUI or the performance of this phone? No, not really. Pretty much nothing, except for one thing. I'm not sure if it's just me or MIUI devices in general, but it doesn't work with Mighty Text, the app which lets you text from your computer. So you get quad band GSM, WCDMA, and LTE. Do check whether it'll work with whatever carrier you're with. I get great reception on this phone, and I'm always on LTE unless I'm in a basement and then it switches to HSPA or 3G. Speeds are great as well. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi also both work pretty well. GPS quality is really good as well. It can pinpoint me on Google Maps almost as fast as the iPhone 6. I usually talk about the infrared sensor in the previous section, the performance and software, but I realized that it fits better here because it connects things. So I try to use it to control my TV and it works perfectly fine, but range is a bit of a problem. I have to be within about 7 feet or 2.1 meters for the infrared to work. You get a 13 megapixel rear snapper here. The level of detail is really decent and the pictures look pretty colorful in general. However, one downside is that the color accuracy isn't there, but your picture at least looks colorful. The camera here can take pictures lightning fast though. If you have your phone out, you can switch from whatever you're doing to the camera and snap a photo in less than a second. Video quality though is average. Videos look a little bit lifeless as the colors are all kind of blend together. Detail is okay though. The front camera is okay for a front camera. You can take selfies, but they aren't going to be amazing quality. So to sum up the camera, it's not bad, but still pretty far behind the iPhone 6, Galaxy S6, LG V10, etc. This phone is packed so full of good things at only $160. There's great build quality, amazing battery, and good performance. At this point, if you're considering the phone, you might as well just buy it now, but here are a few things you should be aware of. The video camera isn't very good, and you only get a 720p resolution screen. And finally, the infrared range is pretty short. Overall though, Xiaomi has outdone themselves with the Redmi 3. There are so few weak points in this phone. If you're considering a cheap phone, this should be your top option. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day. Be sure to hit subscribe and check out any of my other videos as well.